Bonjour et bienvenue à cette finale de la compétition des cas internationaux MBA de l'Université Concordia. C'est excitant de voir trois équipes tellement bien préparées qui ont si bien performé pendant toute la semaine, arriver ici finalement à se compétitionner pour voir qui gagnera le trophée. I'm Pierre Brunet, and the students have asked me to brief you about this case that the students will be analyzing here today. There are three groups, as you know, who will be here. The first team is Northeastern. Second is the Richard Ivey School. And third is Concordia University. And they'll be presenting to the panel of 5 judges who will be presented to you a case called 3M, Dynamic Balance for the 1990s. And the central issue in the case is that company, 3M, that you may know, is driven by growth. Innovation is driven by growth. Profitability is driven by growth. And it needs continued growth, almost on a growing scale. And that is something that was relatively easy in the 40s and 50s and 60s, got more difficult in the 60s and 70s, got to be a challenge, but still feasible in the 1980s. And now in the 1990s, it's very difficult for 3M to keep up that level of growth. It's a very profitable company. There's a 25% return on invested capital, which is pretty nice. I know a lot of company presidents would kill for that, but that's not quite enough for 3M. And so 3M has to find a way to balance its culture of research with the need to be competitive in the market. Historically, it's been very nice to be a researcher at 3M. There were 2 levels of research labs, sector labs and corporate level labs. And the sector labs were really doing basic research, finding new materials, finding things that may be interesting for the people who are developing the products. And then the corporate labs were developing products and trying them or not. And 3M historically has prided itself on having researchers they called mavericks, people who could look at something interesting and see if they could dig up something that the company could profit from. That's how we got those Post-it notes. As you know, that stuff wouldn't set, right? The adhesive wouldn't set. For 3 days, the guy was swearing at that adhesive on this paper in his desk because it wouldn't set. And finally, somebody said, hey, wait a minute, there's a product here. Well, most companies wouldn't allow that fellow to spend 3 days or weeks or months working on this adhesive that wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. 3M has done that, but that's expensive. 3M also historically has allowed 15% of researchers' time to work on projects that they seem to be interested in, whether the company could benefit from them or not. All those issues are now to be re-examined and re-evaluated. There's a push at 3M for the last 5 years called Profitability or Challenge 95, I think, to reduce the cost of research, to reduce the time to market of a new product, of a new idea, without losing that entrepreneurial, competitive maverick spirit. And the company's finding that very difficult to do. It's finding it difficult to do for a number of reasons. One is that they seem to be hiring researchers who are less entrepreneurial and more corporate. The case identifies a few people, researchers there, who say, I can't afford to make a mistake because this is my job, this is my career. Whereas 10 years or 20 years earlier, researchers would say, this is a great place to hang out. They pay me and I do this really cool research. And sometimes it works. So that dynamics have really changed. Costs have to come down. Competitiveness has to come up. Profitability has to stay where it is. Can't lose the entrepreneurial spirit. The company at the same time has gone from a U.S.-based company for a long time selling in the U.S., then to a U.S.-based company selling in other markets, particularly Europe, to a global company that has a very highly developed organization in Europe. It has recently revised its organization in Europe from 13 separate country organizations to one global, one pan-European organization. It has also restructured itself to try and be more efficient, but it's a huge company. It's got 3 sectors, 17 areas of activity, 140 strategic business units, and 87,000 people who work there. This is a very large company trying to pride itself and manage itself in a very innovative way. And it's finding it more and more difficult to do. The structure is tough. The size is tough. The competition is tougher. They don't have nearly as much lead time on products as they had. They don't have the luxury of allowing people to play with their research. And so the students will need to address those issues and come up with some innovative, creative ways for 3M to continue that growth, to continue that innovative spirit without losing its competitive edge. So those are the key issues of this case. And these students who present here, we hope, will come up with ideas to succeed at that, to keep that dynamic balance, to change it and to keep it in place. So you'll be seeing 3 teams, and I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll go and get the judges, bring them in here. I told them I'd do that 10 minutes ago, but here I go. So please be patient. We'll get the process on the way, and thank you very much for listening.
Okay, before we start, I'd just like to welcome you once again. Just want to go over the little rules that we have here. Just to remind everyone, the team will have a 25-minute period to do their presentation. After the judge panel, we'll have a 15-minute question and answer period. So at this time, I'd like to welcome the Northeastern team.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the finals of the 17th Annual International Case Competition held by Concordia University. I'm glad so many of you could attend this afternoon due to the horrendous weather conditions. It's great to see so many in support of this wonderful event. I have the distinguished pleasure this afternoon to introduce our panel of judges. And these are gentlemen and ladies that I've worked with throughout the year, and it's been a great pleasure. So without further ado, Ms. Mackie Vatticino Damasi, CEO of Murray Axsmith. Monsieur Francois Giroux, Executive Vice President and General Manager of Groupe Lacasse. Mr. David Goldman, COO of Noranda, Inc. Mr. Norman Rashcowan, Senior Vice President of Equity Standard Life Portfolio Management. And last but not least, Mr. James Cherry, President of CAE Electronics. And now I'll pass it over to the team to begin.
Good evening, members of the board, 3M Company. We from the Worldwide Consultants are glad to be here with you this evening. Based on the conversation that we have been having with you over the last few months, we have identified the following mandate for tonight's presentation. How should the 3M position itself for future growth in the face of increasing competition while maintaining its innovativeness and entrepreneurial spirit? We have done certain analysis of your company and the environment, and we have the following recommendations for you. Build the company as an idea family. Shift focus to the idea from production. Commit to J35 and never rest programs that you already have in place. Start an early out program and revitalize the 15% rule. And last, manage by sales per employee. Now these are brief points, and we are going to elaborate on it further on later on in the presentation. The following are the benefits that we think you can take from these recommendations. First of all, it helps you maintain the innovativeness and entrepreneurship that is prevalent in this company. It will help you shorten the product development life cycle, which is key to succeeding in the market that you are competing. It will help you organize your operations. And lastly, it will help you increase your growth rate, which has been decreasing over the last few years. So based on this, the following is the agenda for the presentation. First of all, we'll go through an analysis with you. Next, we'll give you certain alternatives that you face at the moment. Then we'll give you a detailed recommendation and implementation plan. We'll talk about some of the risks which you might face while implementing these recommendations. And then we'll go into a discussion phase where we'll answer any questions that you might have. So let's start with looking at your company. Well, Starting from 1914 to 1994, there have been a lot of changes. First of all, the products. Starting from abrasive products, the whole product line has diversified. You have a broad range of products at this moment in 1994. You have gone international. From being domestic, you have diversified into different countries. The focus on innovation and entrepreneurship has been maintained. However, there have been two very significant changes. First of all, in the beginning of the 80s, there was a CEO who focused more on the entrepreneurship that was in the company. But in the middle of the 80s, there was a new CEO in the company, and he focused more on productivity. This focus on productivity has to somewhat neutralize the focus on R&D. Overall, you have seen a decreased sales growth over the last 5 years. So at this point of time, I'm going to turn it over to Gene King, who's going to take you further into the analysis phase. Gene?
As we look at you as a company, we see one very distinctive competency that you do have, and that is your innovation. The efforts that you have made in your research and development, which have really spurred you on for great new product development with the diversification in the products that you have. So that is your distinctive competency. Never lose focus of that. Some of the other strengths that you have, you focus on your quality. Time to market up until now has been very important, although that is diminishing. You have an entrepreneurial spirit where the individuals in your organization are working to build new products and develop new ideas. You have had experienced increased productivity from 83 to 93, and that is something that needs to be addressed. You have also had a very successful approach through your pacing program with the Never Rust trademarked product, and we see that as very distinctive and something that you can build upon in our recommendations. When we look at some of the concerns that we have for your company, your R&D is losing productivity, you have slowing growth rates, your sales have decreased in the growth rates, and that needs to be addressed. You are losing customer focus. That is very important as you develop your new products and try to strengthen your innovation and R&D. You have difficulty prioritizing your products. Employees are less willing to take risks. Some of the middle management that you've been experiencing, that can be a factor. And right now you have no plan for the future. As we look at your sales, from 1980 to 1989, you had a compounded annual growth rate of 11%. From 89 to 93, that decreased significantly to 2.5%. But in 1 year, from 93 to 94, your sales growth has increased by 7.6%, and we see that trend continuing. Some of the environmental factors, this is a time of rapid technological change, and that is where you are positioned with your innovation, your R&D, to really take advantage of the emphasis on new technology. The international markets are growing, somewhere where you have focused and changed your organization. We believe that that is very important for your future. Some of the concerns that we have, however, are product life cycles are becoming shorter. Product development life cycles are very short, and time to market is of the essence. So you need to increase your productivity and increase your innovation, your R&D, and shorten that period of time so that you can be the first to market. You have tougher global competition with global products. All over the world, people are finding economies of scale, being global, and you need to stay ahead of your competitors. There is a growing pressure on your margins, which is impacting your R&D spending. And you have fast imitators that are taking your ideas and trying to copy them and shorten their time to market, which is impacting your business. There are economic conditions as well, which have impacted you throughout the years. It's very important, then, to look at the very distinct, delicate balance between your competitiveness and your innovation. You have to maintain this balance. There's a tension which will always be there in cost cutting, cost effectiveness, and time to market. And you need to look at that. Are you going to limit one at the expense of another? Right now, your product life cycles are taking about 1.5 years. R&D is taking time, and it's taking your global operations time to catch up by making your products more global. We propose that you need to shorten that R&D time so that your product life cycle is shorter and that you can maximize your global expansion around the world in your products. At this point in time, I'm going to turn over to Brian Fahey, who will be talking to you about some of the alternatives that we have for you, and then we'll go into our recommendations.
Some of the alternatives for your company is to stay as a very kind of a bureaucratic, become a very large, stodgy company, go and continue with the process that seems to have occurred over the last 5 years. Certainly an option that has a lower amount of risk for you in the future and a much steadier income and allows you to focus continually on the costs. However, there are some major disadvantages to this option, and that is it counters, it's against your core competency. And the cultural change, you will lose a lot of key people as you become more and more involved in that kind of organization. You will lose this focus on costs, again, will discourage people from joining your company, innovative people, as you go towards a much more general management type company. And so at this point, we do not believe this is an attractive option at all for your company. Second alternative is to focus on product and market development. One example of this would be to outsource a lot of your production. Another option might be to sell some of your more mature products out to some competitors. The great advantage of this alternative is allows your management to focus on your core competencies. You'll get inflows of cash from this, and again, the ability to not so much focus on costs, but focus on innovativeness. The disadvantages are you'll create a kind of a volatile financial results where up to now it's been very steady, and you're already cost competitive. You've been attacking those costs over the last number of years, and there is a sort of a short-term loss of management focus where you are focused on trying to sell off certain areas. So we can't rule out this option. It has some attractive advantages to it, but we're a little wary of it. Another option is to get back to what you have done in the past. Growth through innovation. Again, you're going to leverage off your core competency, the strength that you have. You will be able to attract personnel, innovative people, based on the great name that you have throughout the United States for innovativeness. And the management will focus on the growth, and you can continue with the steady financial results. Your biggest disadvantage is, a different cultural change has been creeping in over the last 5 years, and you've got to counteract that again. And there is a higher risk to this strategy. So what we propose is to take this alternative, and we recommend that we are going to provide a plan for you to implement this alternative. We're going to take some elements from the previous option. At this point, I'm going to take you over to my colleague, Rich Abcold.
Is that good? Okay, Brian outlined for you the possibilities of selling off pieces of your company or running it as a different kind of company, and we think the option of running it as a different kind of company, an innovation company with a renewed and revitalized approach to innovation is the way to go. So we're titling this section, How to Manage Growth in this Innovation Phase. The 5 areas that I want to talk about is the innovation in your company, your product development cycles. Clearly you're getting attacked from copycats on your product cycle times. This is a big area. And you need to address also the question of whether you're going to be a slow growth or a fast growth company. Both options are possible, we think, and you need to be prepared for both. Globalization is an area of your company that is important, and we will address that. Also, probably the key major thing in your company is how to reinstill the entrepreneurial spirit, and we will address that as well. The innovation cycle in the 3M company, we're proposing that you change the concept of your company to being an idea family. You have 80,000 employees. Every one of them should be part of this new idea family. It's a very market-focused company. And we think that the approach should be to focus on products to win. We've got some ideas for how to implement this. The first one is a new concept. Right now you are an absolute idea machine. You are producing more ideas than you know what to do with. You've got them parked away in file cabinets and desk drawers. You're not getting as much out of that as you could. Our proposal is to start a new phase, which is to sell, license, and gain royalties from these ideas in an idea share program. Share is in quotes because you're going to make a lot of money from this. Marketing then will take on the role of filtering these ideas. They already do this now, but what they're doing is they're filtering out the ideas and only acting on the ones that they want to act on. What we're saying is their first priority should be to assess which ideas they can work with, set those aside, and then develop the ideas that are also good ideas, but they've chosen not to market. If we look just in the small division of the do-it-yourself and home stationery area, there are 5,000 ideas on file. From that, we estimate that across the company, if you took just 5% of those ideas and said they're marketable, there's 2,000 marketable ideas sitting in your company files right now. If you market those and just 3% of them are winners, we project that over a 5-year period, you will end up with a $600 million per year cash flow. And this is profit. These revenues have no costs attached, so these are pure profit, pure earnings. That will then free up marketing to focus on picking the winners that your company will develop. And you will continue to make your big bet strategy work out. We want you to run with the big bet strategy. This has been very successful, and we want you to develop kind of a company folklore about the Never Rust program. This was absolutely phenomenal. If you look in the product development life cycle and take the Never Rust program, this was a piece of the J35 initiative, and what you did in this product development plan was to dedicate a team of people solely focused on this product. You fully funded the project right from the start. There was not an initial phase and then additional funding required. This team knew they were funded from the beginning. There was no restraints from the company in their way of winning. A market plan was devised and executed, and there was a production plan integrated in this so that when the idea was developed, production was ready to go. This was a remarkable achievement, and in this you were able to achieve a 25% market share in the first year. This is the model for future big bets right here. This is the key to the future. On the production issue side, the J35 initiative also achieved cost control, and we don't feel you have a lot more mileage to gain in the cost control area. The next phase you should look at is to start managing your company by sales per employee. You want to limit the growth of your employees. You want to know what each and every one of them is doing, and the focus of every employee in your company should really be on development. We are advising that you go towards the concept of an advanced applied process technician in your production sites. These people are not production workers. They are experts at new product development. And the focus should be on pilot production of products. The production issues also point up another interesting phenomenon in your company. You're developing patentable or intellectual property as well as non-patentable, basically easily copied ideas. So what we're proposing is that your pilot production should be carried out if it's a patentable or tricky process with a lot of intellectual property involved. Those are the products that you should develop your own production lines for. On the easy knockoff products, the things that can be copied and your competitors are chasing your tail on, you should plan for an outsource vendor to supply those. They should be working with you to develop a turnkey process, so as soon as you've got the pilot production perfected, the outsource suppliers will then be ready to supply your markets. And this can be done on a global network so that you don't have any time lag. Right now you've got an 18-month time lag between introduction in the US and introduction in Europe. This will cut that down to 9 months. Basically, we're going to have your company chase its own development company. We're going to have a part of your company chasing your own tail and beating the competitors to the market. The question of slow growth versus fast growth, we think can be addressed with a control system. In your company, you need to develop a folklore also about good projects and bad projects. You need to develop a lessons learned kind of approach so that you propagate this throughout your company and say, we know how to turn off a bad project when we see it, a project that is spending too much and will not reap the benefits. Sales per employee, this is something your control systems group, your financial group should be looking at and managing, asking why are we growing in this area of sales if there's not, why are we growing this area of employee count when we're not growing the sales area? You need to develop a reward system, a measurement system for our early out program, and personnel loans. In other words, cross-department personnel loans should be done without overhead attached so that when a resource is needed in one department, it's easily transferred. And I'll talk about the 15% rule in a minute. A little bit on organization. Right now, globally, you're not taking advantage of your European R&D function as much as you could, and we think that's because you're not rewarding the local management based on local performance and global performance. You're rewarding them solely on global performance. So in both areas, in your industrial section and your international section, they should be rewarded on a company overall performance level and the local performance. The entrepreneurial spirit in your company is an absolutely key area, and we've proposed a couple of areas where this should be make improvements for you. One of the areas, your promotions have been closed out in the middle management area section, and we're proposing that you start something called an early out program right now where you give some of your employees the chance to go out, create some spots for your new, younger people, and we would see that this would be done on a basically 1% of your employee count per year, and over 10 years this program would then create a number of spots for promotion. As you move out 2 and 3 years from now, the system should become a reward-based system so that for individuals that are able to do phenomenal results in terms of sales or R&D output, they would be rewarded. And the 15% rule in terms of the R&D corporate, we think that the 15% rule should be revitalized such that you can enforce that 15% of the time is taken to revitalize the spirit of your R&D scientists. And I'd like to turn it over to Brian for a discussion of the outcomes of this recommendation.
Thank you, Rich. some of the cost of the early out system, we're looking at a final cost of 21 million a year and a savings cost of 61 million after 5 years, and you're doubling that over 10 years as you have saved that at 123 employees per year. Looking at the financial projections for the company as a whole, before implementing the plan, we're looking at an EBT at a 14% margin of 2.4 billion and 2.8 billion. But after the implementation plan, once we look at the costs, increased R&D costs at 1% of sales and a payroll implementation of the payroll reward system, we're looking at an increase in 1999 of 9% of your earnings before tax, and in 2004 of 28%. Some of what this will translate to in terms of employee sales per employee productivity, again in 1999 we're looking at an increase of 16% and 33% in year 2004. Now, what are the risks associated with this strategy? We have, if we are unable to sell the ideas that we have, it's a piece of all those ideas that we have generated. And the cultural change, implementation of these, revitalization of the entrepreneurial spirit, and there is loss of key people possibly through that early out system. The competitive response, of course, is always an issue, and the risks associated, and all of these risks can be managed to some degree if they appear. If we are unable to sell the ideas, we will look to try to implement them ourselves. In the cultural change, there is a very strong need for senior management support and a concentrated awareness program of what we are doing in the company. And the loss of the key people, a difficult one always to, if they are looking for financial rewards, it is difficult to deter them from that, although we will try and have a HR ready to try to ask them to stay with the company. The competitive response, our reduction of the product life cycles, and the cultural change that we have that cannot be imitated. In looking at the benefits that we espouse for this strategy, we will see that we are maintaining our innovativeness and entrepreneurship, the shortening of the product development cycle, reorganization of the operations, and our increased growth rate. I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity to present to you. At this point, we'd like to take some questions.
Thank you very much for some interesting ideas. You mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned yourself that we are a large bureaucracy. Given our large bureaucracy and our current structure, do you think that we can implement these types of ideas with the current structure?
Yes, we think so. The large bureaucracy that you have is built on a lot of the production and sales organization, and it's not bad to be large in production areas and the sales areas. The problem is in the development cycle, and you've lost some of the key entrepreneurial spirit in those areas. We think, though, that the Never Rust program was a phenomenal basically pivotal idea for your company and should take you through the next decade. If you manage development cycles like that, you will have a very, very good opportunities for the future.
Thank you very much for your ideas also. But knowing that us, the board, have been in place for a few years, we've been fully supporting the way the company has been run. Would you make suggestions that we should change top management or change the board to implement all this?
No, we do not support that idea right now. The key thing here is to recognize that you are the one who has recognized the problem that exists with the company right now. You have identified that the innovativeness and entrepreneurship is key to the success of this company. and there is increasing competition outside, and you have realized that in order to succeed in this market, you need to do some things which are going to retain the innovativeness and entrepreneurship of the company. So as long as you recognize that, I don't think there is any need to change any members of the board.
Thank you.
You have a very interesting proposal with respect to the evaluation of new ideas. The core of your ideas program talks about using the marketing people as the filter for all new ideas and new concepts in a company. Does that not pose some concern in that marketing people may have a bias towards implementing solutions or products that may have a quick hit, but may stifle innovation and may take a little time to develop?
We feel that marketing and sales are the closest to the customer, therefore it's needed that they need to really drive that. The customer is really the one that is spurring on the new technology, what their needs and wants are, and we feel that by supporting the marketing in that role, that will be the best for the customer.
One of the areas that you've pursued in a way to address the question that you have, the marketing bias, is to transfer people from the R&D groups into a more customer-focused area. And possibly that program could be expanded such that for instance, your 8 meetings per year where you bring your salespeople together and the rest of the company, if there were R&D people involved and the filtering process could go on there, it would help reduce that bias.
As you're aware from your study, we finally made a transition to over half our sales being external from the United States. And also, as you're aware, that our margin success in the States is that we've been able to attract a premium price, and we haven't been able to track that in our next strongest market, the European market. How do you see us redressing that so our margins are complementary to your general strategy to stimulate growth?
Well, one of the suggestions that we had was to cut the introduction cycle in the European market by using this turnkey vendor system. Right there, for instance, at the beginning of the product life cycle, you'll get the premium revenues, and you're not taking advantage of that now. Your product introduction in Europe follows the introduction in the United States by 18 months. If you can cut that in half, you'll have a period of 3 quarters or 4 quarters where you get premium prices for these new products. That should enhance your profitability. It also is going to make it tougher on your competitors, because if you can get in that marketplace quicker, the copycats are not going to have those attractive margins to nibble at.
You mentioned that one of our strengths has been our entrepreneurial spirit, but clearly with the culture, the changes in culture that have taken place over the last few years, that's coming somewhat at risk. I'm not really sure. I can see how your recommendations deal with accelerating the product development cycle, but I'm not really sure how you're fostering entrepreneurship.
One of the successes in the past that you've had is through providing people with good ideas, the freedom to run with the idea, and the rewards if the product or the idea is successful. By focusing your product development teams on fully funded, totally staffed teams, we think that those will be very exciting areas of the company to work for. We also think in reorganizing your production operations so that you're basically scaling up the skill level of the people in the production areas and bringing them into the process, saying, you are the best in the world at developing new processes. This will provide them the sense that this is a company that has a place for them that no other company in the world has.
You mentioned reward systems to support these new ideas. I wasn't clear about what those reward or how you've changed the reward system to support your new strategies.
Reward systems are very complex to administer, and right now you're at an inflection point in your business where your ability to reward by promotion, and promotion has been, you've had the ability to reward by promotion because you've been growing so fast, making spaces for people, has worked fine. And that's a relatively easy promotion system to administer. In the phase that you're in now, it's much more difficult, and you don't have control systems set up. That's a key issue why we suggested control systems for reward systems have to be developed. And it's not going to be the same in production as it is in sales, which is fairly easy. It's going to be quite difficult in R&D, where particularly in your patentable products, the cycle times might be 3 years before rewards could be doled out. So it's a difficult transition. You have to start now. One of the things that we believed was sensible was sales per employee measurements. Now, if you measure your whole company on sales by employee, this will suggest reward systems that are administratable and fair and actually do motivate people.
As you know, we're coming off a period of significant company growth, and we're at a point in our company's life cycle, if I can use your product life cycle analysis, where, according to your presentation, we've become large, bureaucratic, and stodgy. The size and your recommendations remaining about the same, which somehow implies a lot of those other factors. What about other means of returning elements of the company to smaller sectors and returning to a better balance of that competitiveness and innovation that you mentioned was a problem that we face?
When you say returning certain segments of the company to...
Splitting them up into various parts, dividing them out to the shareholders, creating smaller companies.
That was certainly an option that we considered in one of the alternatives in terms of outsourcing production or even selling off, the big chunks of maybe the more mature products that we have. What we thought was a better option was to focus on the growth through the innovation, through the strengths that you have, and continue with the steady growth that you have had in the past. I mean, it's not that you are as stodgy and bureaucratic as other organizations. You still are getting a good % return, but we need to, you can still grow, but sort of focus a lot more on the entrepreneurial spirit and bringing that back in through our implementation plan.
One of the things I wanted to add to that, too, is that you have maintained through the 80s and 90s a reputation with your employees of a non-layoff monster. And if you're going to create a culture as an idea company, this would be contrary to the idea of selling off chunks of your family. So we would see that as a possibility that is not advantageous right now.
But at the same time, you're advocating a fairly major shift back in our culture. I mean, you've acknowledged earlier that we have spent the last couple of years concentrating on productivity, and maybe it hasn't produced a bunch of innovation, but this board of directors has been rather pleased by the fact that we've, in fact, increased our profits and increased our profitability to our shareholders. What we're really concerned about is going back to swinging the pendulum too far back and losing control, perhaps, of some of that productivity. How do you see us maintaining some of that?
The measures that you've put in place are a continuous improvement process for statistical measuring of your production facilities, and we believe you've turned your culture around so that they understand productivity is important. That's something that has required vigilance for the next 10 years, and any production facility you run should be measured by data. You won't have bad results if you continue to do that. That's been a major achievement, but there isn't much mileage left in that. It's marginal. It's a couple percent here and there that you could extract out of that. And the idea of converting to the idea family where you invent a new process, you build a new pilot line, and expand that pilot line until the product is running, then make a choice whether you want to build a huge production plant or farm it out, will be one which doesn't go against the company morale for layoffs but does provide additional profits and sales for the long term. If you don't continue to develop new products and profitable revenue streams, you're eventually going to dry up your revenue source.
Also, you have to recognize that your company over the years has been built on that factor of innovativeness and entrepreneurial spirit. That is what has been sustaining the growth. And if you have lost focus of it, it's probably time to look back on what is it that has made you successful and refocus on that strategy.
Your recommendation is highly based on entrepreneurship, which is a little soft to measure. When will we know that it works or not, and what do we do if it doesn't?
Sales per employee is a key measure of output of innovation. If your sales per employee continue to grow, you know that your innovation and your expense for innovation is paying off. And that can be taken down to divisions and sector levels.
But the expectation is in that approximately 5 years, you will see how much the kind of growth difference that you would have had if you, instead of staying at the same growth pattern that you have now. So the enhanced growth and maintenance of the margins over that time will ensure that you would actually have a higher profit at this time versus a higher profit in 5 years versus if you had maintained on your current strategy.
Despite how broad your recommendations are and the magnitude of the change you're advocating, in actual fact, you're only projecting that we're going to see revenue growth improve from 3% to 6%. It seems to me that you're saying that 3M is no longer a growth company.
And 3M has not been a growth company for the last 5 years, and we are looking at doubling that growth to 1999 and beyond. We are not, because of the size of the company, it's going to be hard to really make that change in a very short period of time. It will take a 6% growth is a lot slower than a growth company, but it would be much faster growth than just continuing on the same pattern that we have been for the last 5 years.
I just wanted to add that you have to recognize that the changes that we are proposing is going to take some time. There's going to be a time lag for that. So you're going to see the returns only, maybe most of the returns might come after 5 years. So this is our projections for 6% are for the next 5 years, but most of the time is going to be while you are implementing all these changes. And culture is something that's difficult to change. It takes a long time.
Here we have the second team for the finals, and we welcome Ivey.
Thank you very much for having us be part of your organization for the last several weeks. It's our pleasure to present to you the analysis we've done to help you, the Vice President of Human Resources, in developing a strategy for your organization and taking this strategy to your executives, your fellow Vice President executives of the 3M organization next week. We really feel the primary issue that we've addressed for you, as you've requested, have been to develop a growth strategy for your organization that's focused on renewal, that's focused on enhancing your innovative and entrepreneurial culture, as well in order to effectively and rapidly deliver new products to your global marketplace. That's what we think the issue is. This afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit our recommendation up front, let you know what it is we think you can do to really affect this change. What are the criteria we've considered in looking at your organization? And what are the other issues that we think that you'll need to address and be fairly comfortable with when addressing your management executive team next week? We believe there are operational pillars of the 3M organization that extend beyond your people, but definitely are about your people, and obviously about reward systems. We think there are levers for success that you have as an operation and an organization that can take you forward. We have a very detailed, thorough action plan that considers the financial impacts as well as contingencies, sensitivity. We're going to give you a timeline that you can take to your management team in implementing this in a fast way through your organization. And of course, lastly, we've considered what the risks are, what the difficulties might be in the organization going forward, as well as you selling this to your team. And of course, wrapping up why we think this is the best thing that you have to take forward to your team. To very briefly give you the backbone of our recommendations for your organizations. We have recommendations about the hiring and training and development of your staff and retaining your people, attracting new good ones and keeping the ones that you have. We have a very thorough, comprehensive reward system and set of systems to help enforce the type of value and culture you want to create in your organization. We've addressed information systems. How can your organization most effectively leverage sharing of information and knowledge in order to be responsive to your marketplace? These include an intranet, as well as several opportunities for inter-organizational transfer of knowledge, and resources, including people. And lastly, we recommend some structural changes, specifically looking at your business units. So in summary, what we have for you is a market-focused strategy. We want you to take your success of the past, your customer focus. We want you to take your product focus of today and take these two and mesh them into a market-focused strategy. Start looking more at your marketplace and responding to your marketplace. When we look at 3M's business units and their goals and their criteria for growth, we think there are several criteria that need to be met in order to have this organization well positioned for the future. They include your growth targets, specifically new product innovations and developments. We know you have to attract and retain employees that are key to your operations, that have entrepreneurial and innovative skills coming to the table and that respond very well in this type of environment. We also think that it's important you be flexible and responsive to the environment no matter what the plan is going forward, and that any kind of recommendation that we help you implement is about a global fit. You're a global corporation, so it can't just satisfy the North American needs. We've got to get our products out faster. That has to be a crucial cornerstone of our plan. And obviously, it's got to be consistent throughout our organization, across all three business sectors and all the way through the organization, all the way down. And lastly, we feel that if we have all of these criteria, we keep the criteria fundamentally about innovativeness and entrepreneurship. What are some other considerations that we had to take in place, recognizing that as VP of Human Resources, in charge of helping this organization restructure and focus on what has traditionally been your key success, and that is your employees? There are other stakeholders, there are shareholders and other employees outside of your researchers, as well as management, that we want to keep in mind, and the public at large, because you do have a very product approach. We think there's a whole aspect of proprietary knowledge and transfer of knowledge, as well as the patentability of your products. The more products that you can retain exclusive control over, the more money we think you can make. We want to ensure that this strategy allows you to have a full pipeline through your research. We don't want things to be sporadic. We want you to know you always have this new release of products as predicted. We also think there's another consideration, and that is how do you prioritize and allocate your resources, because they always will be limited. Lastly, we also want to keep it, not lastly, your size and your image are going to potentially be barriers as well as opportunities for any strategy we introduce for you. We want to make sure we have synergies within our three sectors. And I think we all know we've become sensitive, and I'm sure your management team has, to the criticisms in the marketplace of strategy changes and of redirections of organizations. So we want to keep in mind that what we do, we don't want the analysts and we don't want the marketplace to respond negatively to. It's got to be consistent with who we are and where the future is going. And lastly, let's also keep in mind all the employment practices that you've endorsed as a VP of Human Resources. We have a history of not firing people. We have a history of mitigating downsizing risk. Let's just keep that in mind. So we took these criteria and considerations when we looked at your organization and recognized there are an awful lot of options on the table for us right now. We could become a purely R&D focused company and get someone else to market and manufacture our products. That's an alternative. That could stimulate growth. That could stimulate revenues. We could return to our regional operations in order to stay focused on very small areas of our business and make sure that we're always giving the marketplace what it needs on a very small level. We've become very hierarchical. We have 4 or 5 different levels of hierarchy in our organization. We could potentially flatten things out. And then another very effective way of just cleaning house would be to rationalize our whole labor force and rebuild and get people who are innovative and get people who are creative and start all over if we wanted just to get things going really quickly. Alternatively, we could go back to a customer focus. And sort of a bigger picture is a multidiscipline approach. I recognize you're the Vice President of Human Resources and people are a fundamental part of 3M's business, but we think there are other aspects of 3M's business that we can tie in and really get them to be part of this plan and using multiple levers. And lastly, we could consider outsourcing R&D. Let's look at other companies to develop innovative products for us. We'll just take them on board and we'll switch to be a marketing company. So you can see number 1 and number 7 are polar opposites. As an organization that has 4 what we consider operational pillars, there are potentially other things. There is potentially an alternative that is much better and would satisfy all of the criteria and considerations that we've looked at. We want to focus on a multi-levered, multidisciplinary strategy. We don't think that the other alternatives are substantive enough to help you meet your needs. And to talk about how, as we have 4 operational pillars and how they would be best levered in your business, I'd like to ask Anthony.
Thank you. As Michelle was just mentioning, we recognize that any change within the organization will have to be multifaceted in nature. And what we proposed for you to bring forward to senior management is an integrated symbiotic value chain, which first of all takes advantage of what has been your core competency for a long time, which is R&D. But we know that R&D isn't enough in the current marketplace. There's information that you've provided us, and through our research, that shows that your market is increasingly asking for more effort and sophistication on the sales and marketing side of your business. We propose to bring all of these together and create what we would call a virtuous cycle, so that each of these works to reinforce each other towards the ultimate gain of growth and innovation within your industry. We also recognize that yourself as the Vice President of Human Resources will need to affect change across the organization. And any proposal that we recommend to you and ask you to carry forward would have to take into consideration some dynamics beyond the Human Resources Department. It needs to take care of people and rewards, but it also has to look at information systems across the organization as well as structure. Again, all of this geared towards reinforcing our culture of innovation as well as our business strategy. And we've come together with an action plan, which Hemant Patel will now outline for us.
Thanks, Anthony. I think one of the key success factors for 3M in the past has been the fact that you've been able to bring very innovative products to bear on the marketplace very rapidly. One of the things we don't want to do in our plan is by any way affect that innovative culture. It's fairly important that 3M be able to continue doing so, continue bringing fresh ideas to the table, develop those ideas, and bring them back out again. I think the key problem right now really is how fast we can bring to the marketplace. And are we continuing to develop new products, or are people really being limited by the fact, by the constraints of the workloads that they are under? You've had phenomenal sales growth. At the same time, you've maintained your level of employment. And that's going to have a tremendous impact on how much you can actually do fundamental research. So what we looked at really in terms of the star structure here is if you want to affect change in your culture, if you want to affect the change that you require to continue growth, to find new growth, and to maintain the innovation, you really have to affect each one of these levers individually. So from that perspective, the first thing we really want to look at is your structure, the actual structure of your organization. Let's get that down a bit. One of the first things we looked at is the fact that you do have different product lines, you do have different business units, you have different kinds of products that bring different ways and means of revenue to the organization. So let's really focus ourselves on the two things, growth lines and profitability lines. And by growth, we're really looking at organizations or business lines that require a little bit more capital investment, that require a little bit more attention, a little bit more management focus in order to bring them up to the level of profitability in the near future. If that means focusing more R&D money in there, then so be it. It also will affect the way you I guess to some degree, the way in which you assess and control the people, the management within those organizations. One of the big things we want to do is really start rotating researchers across business lines, start rotating researchers globally as well. If we can find a way to really sort of cross-pollinate the innovation that we have, or at least the knowledge that we have within the organization, and allow the innovation to foster itself. Because innovation really is all about finding ways in which you can take a simple idea, combining it with another idea from somewhere else, and making something that's valuable to the marketplace. So let's start the cross-pollination process. Senior researchers. We know that right now there's a bit of a lull in middle management. If middle management's objective is to bring people together and ideas together and manage those people and those teams, the fact that you've really trimmed your middle management down is going to impact the ability to do and affect our plan. So we really want to start bringing senior researchers up into middle management. By doing these things, we really think what it does is it fosters innovation, and it really does increase corporate knowledge. You cross-pollinate, and you find ways to manage those people. Along that star, the second thing we looked at, in terms of structure as well, just to follow up, if this is the structure of your organization, one of the things we also talked about was the fact that you have your corporate research labs, and you also have sort of corporate research labs over here, and you also have sort of individual business unit line labs over here. Let's start bringing academia in a little bit more at this level here. If we can do fundamental research outside the organization, we can not necessarily outsourcing, but continuing to develop strong ties with academia and get them to start bringing new products up into our corporate research lab. Let's make this the center by which we innovate. Let them do the work, bringing together different ideas and coming up with new products for yourselves. And the next point in that style, on that slide that we mentioned earlier, Anthony mentioned earlier on, was information systems. There's a bit of a communication problem, really. There's a lag, there's a gap between what management thinks, senior management thinks is occurring in your organization, and what we have found a lot of the staff and employees and researchers saying in the organization. There's a communication gap there. Let's try and bridge that communication gap. Let's create a corporate intranet. Let's make sure we communicate our new strategy, our new mission. Let's bring that all back down again. And let's make sure we increase feedback, both upwards and downwards, so that both senior management and the researchers at the bottom level and the staff at the bottom level all understand and know where the corporation is going. By doing this, what you end up doing, really, is fostering a more rapid implementation of our plan. We can't wait for 10 years to do this turnaround. We believe that with the history that your organization has had of implementing and affecting change on a regular basis, by ensuring these methods here, we also ensure that you implement our plan rapidly. And finally, it breaks the hierarchies. And Michelle mentioned that we have a very hierarchical structure. That tends to limit innovation. It tends to limit information flows. Well, if you create intranets, if you process and create feedback, you start breaking some of those hierarchies. And of course, there's the people. The most sort of important area that we have to really focus on. We mentioned earlier on that you have a bit of a problem with the workload that your staff currently under, especially researchers. We are going to suggest that you hire 500 people over the next 3 years. And the bulk of that will be within the research community, but that also includes bringing people into middle management as well, start managing those teams that we're going to be developing. In terms of selection, we believe that you'd be best off selecting focused researchers. You have individual sectors. Let's start bringing researchers into those sectors and very good fundamental research in those sectors. As they develop that knowledge within that sector, let's start giving them flexibility, start moving around different sectors in our business units, and start giving them time to go to the corporate research and do the innovation that we require. So you know, as I mentioned, diversifying internally over time. Training, of course, all of this is going to require a lot of training. Teamwork training. How do teams function? How do teams function well? And how do you support and manage teams? Communication and business management, same sort of thing. As we move senior management up to middle as we move senior researchers up to middle management, they're going to have to know how to manage business units, how to manage teams. And finally, cultural awareness. If we're going to start sending researchers to global areas, let's make sure they understand the impact of moving into, say, for example, a base in the States over to a base in the former Communist bloc, or South Africa, or China. Let's make sure they're aware and ready to do that kind of change. Diversify your recruiting. Let's start looking at institutional technology areas. Start bringing in people, for example, researchers who come from backgrounds in schools where they sort of do a very cross-functional training with some business, with some management, as well as, of course, scientific training. What this does, really, in the end of the day, is it reduces the workload of your current staff, and it increases your productivity. You want to bring more products out to bear. You've had a fairly aggressive goal of, I think it was 30% of your revenues from products that were developed in the last 5 years. Well, it's somewhat difficult if your current staff are being limited by the amount of work they can do. Now, in order to sort of ensure that our plan creates the behaviors that we require, can I have something right there? Well, what about the rewards? How do you sort of provide the incentive for people to continue to do the things you want them to do? There's a bit of a laundry list here, but let me go through them for you somewhat quickly here. First of all, as you succeed, we will allow you to increase your rotation into the corporate lab, where you can do a lot of cross-pollinated research, innovative research. As you succeed, well, before you can do that, really, you have to sort of ensure at some point in time that you announce this opportunity. Make sure people understand that we're going to allow you, if you have success, we'll allow you to increase responsibility, we'll allow you to also proceed up the ladder as well. Make sure we define and articulate exactly what we're going to measure your success on. Is it going to be on the profitability of a product? If you're a junior researcher and you develop something that's profitable, is that going to be the measure? Is that going to be the criteria for your success? At the same time, let's not create an environment where people don't want to do research. Let's not punish failed research efforts. We're not going to let you advance, but we're not going to fire you because you didn't do it. We want to continue ensuring that people do the research. Finally, let's not make sure it's just individual rewards. Let's tie it back to team reward as well. And let's tie it back to the corporation by having employee stock options. We can also increase recognition, sort of these non-tangible rewards that a lot of researchers require. Increase recognition, whether it's through corporate internet advancements or advisements, whether it's through newsletters in the corporation, or even external recognition through publications. Finally, one of the big things is the 15% time flexibility. I think it's very important that as you succeed, we give you more time flexibility. We give you more time to do the individual research that you want to do. But it's going to be contingent on how well you do as a researcher fundamentally. By doing this, what are we going to achieve? Fundamentally, you're going to reinforce and facilitate innovation, and you're going to improve what we think is, to some degree, a reduced morale in the corporation at this point in time. Now, of course, no plan is complete unless we can tell you how we're going to do this. One of the first things we want to make sure we do is develop a very strong executive commitment. Yourself and a few of your senior managers are going to have to join on a team. The entire organization has to know and believe that this is the top-down, that senior management supports it, that middle management supports it. At the same time, make sure we have very cross-functional involvement. We don't want this to be just senior management pushing this down. We want to have the ideas coming up from the base as well. What do your workers fundamentally say that they require? What do they want from us as an organization? Let's make sure we have their ideas pollinating our efforts. Let's divide in employee surveys saying that really, what is it that people are concerned about? What is it fundamentally they're saying that they're worried about? What do they want to do and what do they not want to be able to do? And to sort of pursue this down into your business lines, create subcommittees at business level themselves to report to yourselves in your senior committee to make sure everything's going right. And finally, we think the whole process should really kick off a fairly substantial campaign-wide kickoff. Let's make it big, let's make it splashy, let's get a lot of people involved in it, let everybody know that we're going to start the process as soon as possible. And speaking of the timeline and everything else and the financial impact of what we're discussing, I'd like to pass it off to Sue.
Thanks. When you go to the board of directors with your plan, you can be guaranteed the first thing they're going to say to you is, how much is this going to cost and how is this going to affect our bottom line? Absolutely, they're going to say this. What is the financial impact of our plan? First of all, we estimate the additional hiring of 500 people per year, 1,500 people, over a period of 3 years will cost you $150 million. And I've estimated this $100,000 per employee. Second, we are going to have to build and implement an intranet. Approximate cost, $500,000. Third, increase, Dante mentioned that we want to maintain this 15% commitment to R&D. This is going to increase our R&D expense by 15%, an additional $158 million. Other costs we've estimated to be approximately $10 to $12 million, which includes training, for a total cost of our action plan of approximately $370 million. There's another part of our action plan, the employee stock option plan, that you should consider when you're going to the board of directors, because they would like to know about this. The cost of an employee stock option plan really is dilution, and dilution of shareholder value. And our current shares outstanding are 423 million. If we add an additional 1 million shares, our earnings per share decrease at current rates by 2 cents. We feel that employee stock option plan will not reach 1 million shares in the first year or even in the first 2 years. So we feel that the negative impact of the employee stock option plan will be minimal. The financial impact, the $370 million we estimated it would cost, will decrease your earnings per share to $2.83. Given your current levels. The share price may drop, but it's unlikely for really 2 reasons. This plan is going to be phased in over a 3-year period. This is not going to take place all at once. If it did take place all at once, the immediate impact would be that $2.83, the drop in your share price. Also, we don't think it's going to affect the share price because the markets have been requesting this. We've been getting pressure from the markets to change, to do something, to be more innovative. We actually think this, in the long run, will be positive on the share price. The bottom line is, in the long run, revenues will increase and profits will increase. We don't anticipate this to occur overnight. Our 3-year plan costs $370 million. We believe you'll be able to get this back in increased revenue and increased profit in the near term. But some of the other issues that may have to be considered when you're taking a look at the financial impact is the cost of hiring. If the cost of hiring increases, for instance, our profit will decrease. We have to take into consideration technology costs. If any of these costs change, we have to be sensitive to it and recognize that it will affect the impact on our earnings per share, and in turn, our share price. What is the implementation? What is the timeline for our implementation? We estimate to have our intranet up within 1 year. We recommend that's a good time frame. Recruitment, we estimate will take 3 years. We'd like to add an additional 500 employees every year. The employee stock option plan, we do not want to start in year 1. We'd like it to start in year 2 and be phased in after year 1 during year 2. Our communication plan, which Dante talked about, for instance, in communicating success stories within the organization in year 1, and training, obviously, all throughout the years. What are the risks of our plan? The first risk is that we do not have any new profitable products or a timely release. One of the risks is our plan does not allow us to come out with new products. Also, we may have organizational resistance. What if the employees internally are resistant to any change and change in the cultural attitudes? We may have market backlash. We talked about the impact of spending $370 million. How's the market going to perceive that? We feel that risk is mitigated with the increase in value we'll achieve in the long run. It may take us too long to implement, or we may even have understated our costs. A contingency plan. What happens? What can we do if our... Am I done? Thank you very much.
the strategy that you're proposing to us is a little bit of a back to the future sort of approach. We've been an innovative company for many, many years, and the board of directors of this company, the people that I'm going to have to convince that this plan makes some sense, have adopted a policy of trying to improve productivity, to some extent to the expense of reducing our focus on innovation. But over the last 4 or 5 years, we haven't been entirely unsuccessful. We haven't been growing particularly fast, but our market share over the 90 to 94 period is okay. Our market price has gone from $43 a share to $54. So we haven't been entirely unsuccessful. How do you propose that from my perch as the VPHR, I'm going to be able to convince the board of directors that this is the task, the tack that we should be taking for the future?
I think one of the first things that we do is when we go to the board of directors, show them that if you're really concerned about the wealth of your organization, number one, the rate at which your sales growth has, actually your sales growth has been declining over time. Your margins are declining, and that really is a result of the fact that the products you're bringing to bear on the market may not be the most innovative, may not be the most timely for the market, may not be the ones the market really desires. So what we're suggesting we try to do is be more market-oriented and show the board that, in fact, we will improve our margins, we will improve the sales rate. The operating efficiency we talk about, productive efficiency, that creates a lot of improvement in profitability, but doesn't say you're really increasing your sales at all. Our plan addresses that.
And when you go to the board of directors, you must realize and emphasize that the market is not static. There's new technologies out in the market. Our competitors are becoming increasingly faster. The economy is moving to a globalized economy, and these effects in the market are really are forcing us to change. If we remain static, we have had growth in. We totally agree. We've had growth in the last few years, but we don't see that growth being maintained in the long run unless change is effective.
You mentioned that the market, and by this I took that you meant the stock market, might have some problems with the impact of your recommendation in terms of an immediate decline in earnings per share. And while I agree that the stock market wants us to change, they generally want companies to change with an impact that increases earnings, not a change that decreases earnings. How would you get investors to accept a plan that essentially asks them to wait for 3 years before the earnings get back and the payoff starts to show up?
One of the things is, first of all, we recognize that the market is putting pressure on us. Therefore, our stock price may already be slightly reduced because of that. We feel that we're planning to spend $370 million over a period of 3 years. The drop in share price to 280 to 283 will take place. That is the worst case scenario if we did the entire plan within the first year. And we also, so really the share price drop to 283 will not take place because we're spreading out that.
Sorry, just to clarify something, maybe I misunderstood, but it was my impression that the costs of hiring the 1,500 people would be ongoing once they're hired, and the cost of the 15% free time in R&D would be, again, ongoing. So in actual fact, you're looking at much of the $370 million being ongoing year after year. It's not 3 years and then that's it.
Actually, partly, but there is a large part of our hiring cost of that $100,000. That's only partially salary cost, but there is a very high cost in hiring, going through the whole recruiting process to get one employee onto our staff. So of that $100,000, we estimated up to 40% would be directly related to just the hiring and recruiting and training. Very front-end loaded. We're not looking at offering salaries of $100,000 per year.
I'd like to continue on the subject of my colleague here. The only issue that I'd like you to clarify is your increase of $370 million, while in a company that has earnings of $15 billion, doesn't seem like a lot, represents about 15% of our income before taxes. And that appears to be a rather significant number with rather significant repercussions in the marketplace. Could you please comment?
I think what our perspective was that the company is doing well. There's no doubt that 3M is something to take the board with. 3M is doing well, doing well, very well. The question becomes, can 3M continue to do what it's doing right now, say 5 to 10 years from now? In our perspective, market realities, you have to affect pretty significant change, and the costs incurred are going to be significant as well. It's really a risk if you're not doing anything at all, and will you be able to continue to be competitive in the local marketplace? We didn't think so. We think by going to the board and suggesting to them that in fact it is a significant cost, you don't want to take the future costs will be far greater.
If I can just follow up, one of the things that we do recognize is that that expenditure is in fact over a 3-year period. So it is over 3 years of earnings. But more importantly, we were really concerned as a group looking at your R&D expenditures of 6 to 7% of total sales. And in a competitive marketplace where you have to become front-end loaded in your research and development and your launch to get more products out there quickly, we needed to get you to consider investing in that upfront and recognizing that shareholders know that that's the business that we're in. That's when they invest in 3M, they know there's an element of risk for a higher return. And we think if we could get you to invest in the short term upfront in your product life cycle and research and development and focus on the bottom line at your research and development. It goes back to Anthony's circle. What fuels this company forward is what research and development brings to the marketplace.
You're suggesting that we move senior researchers into mid-management. Could you comment on what will be the effect on research itself as soon as we take these guys out, and on the quality of management and control when we take researchers into management positions?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things we do before we move senior researchers into management is give them business training, fundamental communication training, teamwork training, the impact on research itself and innovation. What we're suggesting is that by having senior researchers managing teams and researchers below them, you get innovation across lines, across business units. That's where the innovation comes from. We want senior researchers who have experience across the corporation to start managing the lower level researchers who are doing individual business unit line research, and finding ways to take that piece of research and somebody else's piece of research, combining them to make something innovative for the marketplace. And that was where we believed we could find more innovation by having senior people who understand the organization start leading the change. I'm not sure if that addresses your question.
As a VP HR, I guess one of my the difficulties I have with your presentation today is this idea of hiring an additional 500 people per year. When already my sales per employee have been going down, you're saying employees now don't have time to do everything they have to do, and then your solution is to hire more people. But is the problem really more people, or is there more to it than that when we see that our sales per employee is going down?
Well, one of the problems we know is that our competitors and our major competitors are coming into what were, for us, safe markets. We were enjoying a time up until very recently where we didn't face a lot of competition in the U.S. marketplace. Now with the aggressive actions of your competitors like Siemens being in the marketplace, they've gone after what have been kind of safe industries, so you were no longer able to use those revenues to then launch abroad. So we find that in order to kind of respond to that competitive entry into your marketplace, you're going to need to build up a little bit more aggressively in that area.
Yeah, also, the sales per employee decreasing is also a function of the fact that your margins have decreased substantially, fairly substantially. And the question then becomes, why are your margins decreasing? And this is something you have to address at the board level as well. Margins may be decreasing because the marketplace, the market that we're talking about, not the financial markets, but the customer marketplace, doesn't recognize the value of doing this product. They don't recognize innovation. So if we have to drive up the innovation, to drive up the margin, and increase the sales per employee, well, we hope that our plan addresses the fact that you will be able to find more innovation, create the higher margins, and bring back the sales per employee.
If I can just follow up, sorry. One of the things is this plan is implemented in 3 years, but it's not going to have an immediate effect. It will have, obviously, will have an immediate effect, but changing culture and changing the way an organization operates is a long-term goal. And we believe that you are going to get your benefits in the long run if you invest this money initially.
At the outset, you talked a little bit about our structure and indicated that we were bureaucratic. And you've used the term business units a couple of times throughout, but you haven't really addressed the fundamental structure of the company. Do you think we're structured properly to go forward, given what our challenges are?
When we look at your organization, the first thing that obviously is concerning is your incredible size. And that makes a flat organization very difficult. It also makes a multi-sector, team-based regional focus very difficult. We think that one of the keys for success for your company when you develop a new product is having a bigger market, the better. So when you're developing products and you're staying very focused on the marketplace as a whole being a global marketplace, we think your structure with the 3 sectors driven down into the various channels into 5 business units, across business units, is in fact the way to be both responsive to your marketplace as well as to keep fostering cross-sector information, which is how we address not fundamentally changing your organizational structure, but changing how you operate among units, increasing the number of dotted lines, if you will, from solid lines.
You made the point early in your presentation that we were hierarchical and had to flatten the organization, and yet at the same time you're recommending that we increase middle management and that we introduce business line subcommittees, and I'm wondering how that moves us towards the goal of becoming less hierarchical.
When I suggested hierarchies, I was talking about communication hierarchies, not necessarily structural hierarchies.
I think that was the alternative slide. That was actually an alternative, would be to flatten your organization right out, and in fact that's not an alternative that we put forward. Sorry to clarify.
Also, returning to your presentation, there was one quick snapper that maybe I missed, but you said you wanted to reduce the workload and increase productivity. Can you explain that new math to me, please?
Yeah, what we're suggesting is if you bring in more, the problem right now is you have about 4,000, I think that one of your business units, you have a backlog of 4,000 products that are just sitting there. Ideas that can be brought to market, but no one has the time to do anything with them. What we're suggesting is basically if you can bring in more workers and allow researchers to start looking into these new products, looking into new innovations, you start bringing more products to the marketplace. That's what we're talking about there.
Actually, that just brings up another question that I had. In terms of, you say yourself, we have about 4,000 ideas sitting on the table. Why bring in academia? At one point you said we needed academia to help us come up with new ideas. We've already got 4,000 sitting in a desk.
We're not necessarily going to bring in academia. The organizational structure we said was a dotted line insofar as we think that 3M could really leverage some of their research dollars by putting them into academia to have them throw ideas to us. We've got the innovative abilities to look at a product or a molecule or a something and design it for a marketplace. If we keep our connections with pure science researchers and recognize that we've got strengths internally that are more about actually researching and developing beyond the benchmark research type of things, we thought that having that small, tiny bit of our business outsourced, if you will, allows us to be really in touch with what's leading edge, but at the same time maintaining control of what we would consider to be proprietary information, that is, how we mix that up and take it into our marketplace, be it Europe, be it Asia, be it North America.
You've just mentioned that point, that we're a global company. What consideration have you given in the implementation globally of that plan with cultural differences?
Yeah, and that was one of the big things we talked about was cultural awareness, cultural training. Implementing plans of change in some cultures, like for example India, where hierarchies are very, very important. Japan as well, where hierarchies are very important. It's all about management training. It's about making sure the people who institute the change in those areas, for the sub-units and the sub-unit committees, rather, making sure that they're aware that in their part of the world, the structures that we're proposing are put in place with cultural sensitivity. And the whole thing is really based on training people that they understand globally the differences in culture in our organization. And by rotating researchers and staff, we start bringing in that global perspective right across the organization.
You mentioned in the rewards segment that we would have to define the criteria for success in evaluating researchers and those who would be eligible to rotate into the corporate lab, for example. What would you suggest as a criteria for success?
Sure. I mean, one of the simplest ones would be if a junior researcher, for example, is asked to develop a product. I'll take something with a bucket, for example. If it's a bucket that the market likes, it's successful. You've done something that the market wants. And obviously, you're working in a team with marketing people, with the sales people, and they say, look, this is what our customers are saying we need. This is what the marketplace is saying we need. If you develop that and it's successful, that's a measure of success. And this corollary to holistic is also, if it doesn't succeed, it doesn't punish you for that failure. You don't only, the last thing we do is is foster an environment where every single endeavor has to succeed. Let's make sure that people are allowed to do certain things. If they succeed, we'll move forward. If not, then we're not going to punish you for it either.
One of the key aspects of our One of the key aspects of evaluating success has to be marketplace acceptance. And we think the more we get a research and development team to stand up to that criteria, if you will, the more they will work with sales and marketing and manufacturer to ensure that what we offer to the market is what the market wants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, senior management of the 3M company. Welcome to our presentation. I'd like to start today's presentation by asking somewhat of a rhetorical question. What is the essence of the 3M company? What's the essence of our company? It can be summed up in two words: innovation and the entrepreneurial spirit. Two basic facets of human nature. How is it that 3M has harnessed these basic facets of human nature? We've fostered a corporate culture over many years which has taken full advantage of this nature. That's where we've come from. That's where the organization has grown from, and that's the strengths of the organization. But what we're seeing in the outside environment of the world today is a very changing and a very complex business environment. So what we're going to do for you today is we're going to give you a strategic plan that is going to gauge the environment and assess the strategic direction of the company with respect to that environment. I'll give you the agenda, just to let you know where we're going today. First of all, I'll come in with the problem definition the strategic task force set themselves, and also give you an outline of the recommendation we've developed. I'll then pass you across to Rula, who will conduct an analysis, a thorough analysis explaining the situation. Then Ken will have a quick financial profile, a look at the other alternatives we considered, as well as a padding out of the recommendation. Following that will be a quick set of financial projections of the company. And then Miles McPherson will come on at the end with the plan of action, and I'll come on just at the final for a quick little summary. We'll open the floor to questions after that. Right, so how do we define the problem ahead of us? Our problem is to develop a strategy which enhances our corporate culture of innovation, I should say, to ensure the long-term sustainable growth of revenue. Obviously, the bottom line of this business is the growth of revenue. What are the issues which we're concerned? These are the issues that were given to us by yourself, senior management, some months ago. This is the research agenda, how high or low research should be on the list of priorities. The fact that mass market products seems to be the trend. The fact that development life cycles need to be brought down. And the fact that perhaps international markets aren't quite being assessed as well as they should be. How does the recommendation look? It's a multi-tiered recommendation, as you can see. We're looking to modify the innovation process chain. You'll see through the theme of the presentation, when Rula comes up, the innovation process chain is a key to understanding what the problem is and therefore obviously solving the problem. The elements of the plan basically is a geographical proportioning of the R&D effort, a change to the screening criteria. You'll see what this means further down the presentation. More bench time. There'll be an increasing of bench time for the R&D people to exercise their creative talents. There will be an adjustment to the reward system, and also there will be an adjustment, an increase to the long-term R&D expenditures. What's it going to do for you? We're going to meet the challenges facing us, to meet the challenges of this complex business environment. I'd like to quickly go over some of the drivers that are driving our industry being a very multi-dimensional industry. We're in so many products. Global competition, obviously, is a big driver in any industry, but especially in ours when we're exposed to so many different products. Technology, a key driver. Product life cycle is a key driver. These things are coming down with time. We've got to attend to that. Imitators, competition coming in. We're great for innovation and getting new products, but it's very easy to copy our products. And the business cycle. Obviously, the business cycle in recessionary times are difficult for companies. What are the key success factors to our company? I've outlined it from the very beginning. Innovation is the key. How do you facilitate innovation? How do you bring innovation to the fore? R&D, the R&D focus. Corporate culture, the corporate culture which supports that innovation. International markets are key to success in this business. A customer orientation, a focus towards the customer wants, is another key to success. And the product development times. Just as we've seen the product life cycles coming down, so too we've got to match that with product development times, which are getting shorter and shorter. What does this mean? We've got to get a competitive advantage. We've had a competitive advantage in the past. We've got to maintain a competitive advantage in a very tough environment. That summarizes my first part of the presentation. What I'll do is I'll pass you over now to Rula, who'll take you through a more in-depth analysis of the situation.
Thank you. Sean has highlighted to you the trends in the industry and what it takes to be successful in the industry. Let me now analyze to you thoroughly what we've been doing in the company and what's been going on. First of all, we have the people of our company. Those people, they make the culture of the company. When we say about the culture, it's the way they do things, the way they interact between each other. It's the whole thing. From those people and this culture, we get the innovation of ideas. And from the innovation of ideas, we go to the management of marketing potential, if those ideas are good for the market or not. If they are, that's when we introduce the new products. And from our new products, we get the sales growth and the global position we have today. Between the innovation and the sales growth, you have the customer feedback. If the customer like it, we always get feedback when we get the products to the customer, and that's how the process of innovation continues. However, we should realize the environment role in this process innovation chain. As Sean mentioned, there are so many trends in the environment, and those trends are affecting the management of marketing potential, the way we reject or accept the ideas of the new products. And from these trends, the changes in the management, the culture is changing. There are more constraints because of the competition. There are more constraints put on the marketing and so on. So let's look at the environment more thoroughly and see the opportunities and the threats. The first opportunity is the product development. To grow, to be global, we need new products. That's our main opportunity. The international markets, the markets are growing internationally and mainly in Europe, and it's a great opportunity for us. The technology, we're in a very rapidly change of technology. So this changes we are in this industry, so we have to realize this as an opportunity that it changes. However, the threats are many. We have a global competition. Our competitors globally have more financial resources. They have more consolidated management and R&Ds. That this is a threat to us. Especially because we're global. We have shorter products life cycles, and it's getting our products are getting shorter and shorter life cycles. So that means we have to introduce more and more products, and that's a threat. The imitations of our products is increasing, and that's another threat to us. Our sales have been, the gross sales have been slowing down. We went from 11% in the 80s to 2.5% in the 90s. The increasing regulations in some countries and continents are affecting our penetrations in those markets. So what we need to do is we need to act now. If we look at our company and see what we've been doing well, we have had a good R&D, and that's where the innovation is coming from, and our new products. Our financial resources, we're a healthy company. We can afford making changes and introducing new strategy. We're global. We have access to a lot of international markets. And our culture has been a main strength to us. The entrepreneurial spirit, as Sean mentioned, the corporate culture has encouraged innovation, and that was mainly the products they were coming from. Our productivity has been increasing. We've introduced many strategy goals to increase productivity and efficiency. On the other hand, there are areas of concern. We haven't been in synchronization with the environment. The trends were a lot, the threats are many, and our strategy hasn't been in synchronization with the environment. There's tension over the R&D and budget. We have some constraints over limiting the budget for R&D, and that's giving tension for the budget. And we have to keep in mind that R&D is a key success factor to a company like us. We haven't been customer-oriented. We haven't been out to see what the customer needs. And we haven't been really listening to the customer to develop the product. Our reward system hasn't been working properly. Our employees are not motivated, and that's a concern to us. The innovation is increasing. We used to come up with more products from our people, and maybe because they're not motivated anymore, our innovation is decreasing. So the core competencies, as Sean has mentioned, are innovations and entrepreneurial spirit. We have to maintain those core competencies because that's why we've been successful, and we have to maintain them in order to grow. I will pass you on now to Ken, who will give you the financial analysis, the alternatives, and the recommendation.
Let's just take a quick snapshot of where we are today. Sales in the 90s have been flat. They've been averaging about 2.5%. As Rulis mentioned, quite down from the early 80s when you were averaging 11%. Your R&D spending in the last year has gone down. We've gone from 7.3% of sales to 7%. Our profitability has remained relatively stable because of our productivity gains. And we also have a very strong balance sheet, $1 of debt for every $4 of equity. So where does that leave us? Well, we need to increase our R&D spending to ensure long-term revenue growth, and we have the financial resources to do it because we have a strong balance sheet. Now let's look at some of the alternatives that we have to try to achieve this. And here we're really talking about the culture of the company and the way the R&D program is being done within the company. We can revert to form, which is micromanaged strategic business units with emphasis on long-term R&D spending, as well as a smaller R&D teams. Typically, we used to operate in 1 and 2 individuals. We've now moved away from that into much larger teams, which is really closer to the norm. The external environment has forced us to go in this direction. This allows us to get products to market quicker. Long-term R&D, however, has decreased because of that. So going, again, closer to the norm would decrease this even more. And of course, we would be increasing our R&D teams still. However, there is a third alternative, and it's called built to perform. And that entails modifying the value chain, the innovative process chain that Rula put up for you before. Let's analyze each of these alternatives with respect to the issues that Sean highlighted for you earlier, and look at them with respect to research, mass marketing of products, international markets, and the development life cycle. If we return to form, of course, when we looked at this in terms of research, our employees have always liked the old research systems. They didn't feel stifled by them, and they enjoyed the small teams because they were able to really generate ideas that they felt close to. However, as we moved closer to the norm, this has disappeared. They have not had the time to invest in the ideas that they felt were important to them, and which have been the backbone of the company over its long existence. So if we really look at this on a case-by-case basis, if we return to form, the only positive is that our research issue will be addressed. However, it will not address our mass market, development life cycle times, and international markets, leveraging of international markets. If we go to the norm, yes, we'll be able to address all 3 of the latter issues, but again, we would be stifling our employees, which have provided the backbone of the company over the last 100 years. However, there is, again, a fourth alternative, and that's build the system to perform, where we can address each of these issues in a positive light, and we'll go into how before later. The recommendation, build to perform, increase the new product stream to generate long-term revenue growth. How are we going to do it? Well, here it is. We're going to geographically proportion our R&D. 50% of our sales are currently outside of the U.S., yet 33% of our R&D resources are only outside of the U.S. We're going to increase the screening criteria. We're going to increase bench time. We're going to increase the reward. We're going to change the reward systems, and of course, we're going to increase long-term R&D. This is what I was just mentioning before. Sales, 50% are in the U.S. However, 67% of our R&D workforce is there as well. So we're really underserving our international markets. We must proportionate, and we have to localize and originate. Presently, our R&D in the European markets is only being used to localize. They have to also be responsible for originating original ideas and then transferring those back to the U.S., and the U.S. will have to localize these again. This, again, is being forced upon us because of the international competition. There is no reason why they will not be able to originate the ideas that can be used in the U.S., and again, they would be in a position also to imitate our foreign competitors and bring the ideas that we can capitalize on, building on our strengths. And here I'm going to highlight to you the importance of long-term research and development expenditure. Essentially what this tells you is that your long-term R&D expenditure eventually becomes your short-term R&D expenditure. And if you want to continue developing products, you have to continuously be spending on long-term R&D. Again, there is a rollover effect, and this is what's going to funnel the future growth and revenue. As I said, long-term does equal the short-term. Let's just give you a brief snapshot of where we're going to be in 5 years after we implement our recommendation. Revenues will reach $20 billion, which is basically a doubling of our growth rate from 1995, where we sit today, to 5% on an annual basis. We'll have to increase R&D expenditures to be able to achieve this, and we are going to keep our net income at a stable 9% rate. So we will see that we will increase our revenues, increase our net income, as a result of increasing R&D expenditures. Now I'll pass you over to Miles, who will show you how we are going to implement this plan of action.
Well, Ken's just shown you a comprehensive analysis of the alternatives we've considered, and you can see that it's the purpose of this recommendation to help our company achieve the 30% sales, 30% of revenue coming from products that are less than 4 years old. And what I'm going to do now is show you a plan of action that will help us to achieve this recommendation. And I've split this now into innovation, screening, people, and of course a contingency in case what we're projecting to you doesn't work out exactly the way we plan. So let's take a look at innovation. First thing is, as Ken was alluding to earlier, we've got to broaden our R&D centers. Right now we have 2 long-term R&D centers in the U.S., one in Austin and one in St. Paul. We've got to get more long-term R&D centers out around the rest of the world where we can tap these growing markets to get them closer to the marketplace, both with respect to long-term and short-term. But these ones I'm proposing to up here are going to be all long-term centers. We'll create one pan-European center in this year. We've already well on the way to that. Then in Asia in 2 years and Latin America in 4 years. That'll take us out towards the end of the 5-year plan that we're looking at right now. Each business unit, we have 102 research labs right now across the world. Each business unit's got to take one R&D lab and turn it into a midterm lab. Right now, all of our R&D labs at the business units are much too short-term focused, and that's creating a bottleneck whereby we're not getting any products into the pipeline. So again, as Ken alluded to earlier, we've got to localize and originate in each country, not just have countries that are in the product cycle just doing localization. That's not going to help us with respect to global competition. We have to increase our annual R&D budget to 10%, and Ken showed you how that was going to be done over a phased period. And most importantly with respect to innovation, this is going to be very difficult for us to grapple with, and you'll see in the next section under screening how we're going to attend to that. But how do we measure discontinuous innovation? It's very easy sometimes for managers such as ourselves to look at continuous innovation and process innovation and determine how it is that we can measure where the market is growing and where it's going to be 5 years from now. But how do we do that for discontinuous innovation? And that particular is perhaps where we're lacking right now and where we have the most growth potential into the future. So again, how are we going to do that? One of the things is reduce the size of our R&D teams. Right now, the average size is around 100 people, and we've got to bring it down to a more manageable size, 50 people. And this is going to basically help us to put more products into the pipeline. So let's look at screening. The next major issue on the agenda here for my plan of action. We've got to get more ideas going through the pipeline. Right now, given the fact that there's a lot of emphasis stressed on product cycle time, which is important to us, their product cycles are shortening, but there's a block. People are afraid to get a black mark against their name. They're afraid to make mistakes. We've got to get more ideas into the pipeline and push them through into product development. And the way we're going to do that is essentially changing our product innovation charter. We're going to change the weighting system that we have right now to evaluate the criteria with which we evaluate our products so that we can get more discontinuous innovation into the product pipeline. And we'll have to add more elements that deal specifically with how we can measure discontinuity. Again, we're going to have to focus our business units on achieving profitable customer solutions. In the past, we were very good at that. It didn't help us with economies of scale, but we're going to have to start looking at that again. And we're going to have to get more customers into meeting our R&D people, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the person in charge of all this, we're going to have, again, since R&D and marketing are very close together, closely knit with this, we're going to have to make sure that both these people are working in conjunction to move this forward. Now, you saw a similar process to this, and we're recommending that our new process look exactly like this. It's our people and culture that ultimately generate ideas. It moves through a screening process, and then on to product development, testing, and eventually full marketing. Right now, our screening process is cutting off our people from generating additional ideas. What we want to do with the new product innovation charter is force more products into the product development stage. Okay, let's look at the people side of this. First thing we're going to have to do, since we're reducing the size of our teams, is add more middle managers. That's going to be a crucial issue. What this is going to do is provide non-monetary rewards for our people. Sometimes it can be very easy for a company such as ourselves to attract very smart, very enthusiastic, very good people. Keeping them can be more difficult when we have a very flat organization. If we start to add more places for these people to be promoted to, they'll be more interested in staying with the company long time. And of course, long-term loyalty is what's going to help us generate long-term ideas. So we need more middle managers, and the other thing with that is we need a little bit more administrative staff at the R&D level. All of our people have said they're spending more time on bureaucracy and less time generating ideas and process developments. We've got to get them a little bit more administrative staff to handle this bureaucracy so that they can move forward with doing what we do best, which is generating ideas. And as was mentioned, we've got to start looking for more cooks. We've got to get the HR department to change the criteria of the hiring so we get more entrepreneurial people, more autonomous people, and more customer-focused people. And basically, this is going to allow us to get more bench time for our people that are right now the hardest workers for us. Okay, how are we going to get the word out to people? Well, we've got to communicate the new direction. We've got a good video system that works. We can send out videos to all our different places. We've got a newsletter because we've got to do this now. We've got to indicate to people that we're starting to shift back to a forward-looking position with respect to product innovation. And we've got to have management meetings that indicate that this is where we're going so that it gets passed down from the top, from people such as yourselves, all the way down to the bottom. So they start to believe again in the 15% slack time. And we've got to hold more brainstorming sessions with our people. We've got to give them time to do that, not just managerial meetings, but brainstorming so that they can get out more ideas. And again, we've got to get our R&D staff together with customers. Right now we're doing that about 8 times a year. We've got to increase that to 12 times a year so we can reduce our product cycle times. Lastly, this is a very difficult concept to get around sometimes. It was for me. But it's hard to get people to understand how they can be more creative. But that's something we can do. There are small things we can do. I mentioned previously brainstorming. We've got to come up with training techniques that are going to allow people to harness their own energies, learn how to learn faster, learn how to generate more ideas, learn what it is to do better things in our environment. And of course, we've got to get people a little bit more out of the office so they're not stuck, always focused in their four walls, just seeing their little cubicle and the white ceiling. We've got to get people out into the big sunshine where they can do good things. And this is going to be basically make people believe in the slack time again. And that's the most important issue. So what happens if this doesn't work? What if we're not generating 30% sales from 4-year-old products 5 years from now? What do we got to do? Well, basically two things. First thing is we've got to reassess the viability of micro strategic business units. We may have to start going back to smaller teams in order to get more creativity going. And the other thing is we may have to rethink our target given our global competition and the way the environment is today. And now I'm going to pass it back to Sean to give a quick conclusion and wrap up.
Well, it's quite simple. Senior management of 3M, that's fine, thank you. What we've given you today is a plan that's going to help to foster a culture of innovation, maintain that culture of innovation that we've had so strongly in the past, and that will propel growth into the next century, and thus meet with the strategic vision of 3M, which is maintain growth through innovation and product development. That concludes the presentation for this afternoon. I'll now open the floor to any questions you may have.
Presentation. One of the things I'd like you to clarify, however, you put a lot of emphasis on how our people right now are really afraid of bringing forth new ideas for fear of making errors, and so therefore they're not being as innovative. How does your plan overcome that fear?
Well, essentially, what's the issue there is that when people present ideas and they don't get captured into the system, or they feel afraid that they're going to make a mistake and get a black mark against them. So if there's presenting products that don't go into fruition, get past the screening process, they're afraid to then generate the next idea. And if people see their ideas going to fruition, therefore we pass more ideas through the pipeline, they will come to believe that their ideas are valuable to the company and they're valuable to their bosses, and then that will help them get promoted. I believe that's the essential issue here.
If we then let many more ideas go through the screening process into development, how much more money will be lost on products that will never hit the street?
This is a situation where we can only look at the amount of money that will be lost on products that will eventually not make it to the market. You have to realize that some of the ideas that we're discounting now, we're discounting forever. They're getting to the drawing board, they're being turned away, and we're not revisiting them. However, every idea that gets knocked down, there will be an idea that will make it through, which will make all the rewards greater than the risks of letting some products through to the product stage that should maybe not make it through. Does that answer the question?
I'm confused, and perhaps you could help me. In your recommendations, you've recommended adding layers of staff, which inevitably means more bureaucracy, diverse R&D locations, which means more reporting and communication, administrative staff. Those of us who deal with that know that means someone's going to have to do more reports to keep them busy. And screening criteria, new systems. So it seems to me that by trying to stimulate the environment and remove the constraints that have been an impediment, you've added a hell of a lot of constraints. Can you comment, please?
I'll tend to the first issue there. The idea is that, as we said from the very outset, the entrepreneurial spirit and the allowance of that entrepreneurial spirit to thrive is crucial to keeping people with your organization, and crucial for the innovative process. They not only want to innovate a new idea, they want to take it through to fruition, and they want their career to move with it. The SBUs in the past facilitated that. If you had a good idea, you could run with it, and you could, like your company within a company, you could take forward. So the idea of having more middle management, that's giving you more positions. That's giving you a chance of moving up and giving you a chance of promotions and being motivated by the fact that there's some way to go there. You can take your product, and if your product moves well, you can develop it and you can move up the chain. So, and a second point to that is the fact that we want to take away, as you saw in the plan of action, there is a set of administrative staff there. So a second part to free up the creative spirit and innovation in people is to take away a lot of those more clerical duties and put those with people who are responsible for those solely. So now we're saying there's more time available to be innovative, but there's also more incentive to be innovative because there's room to move within the company. Yeah, the question was multifaceted. I think the first part.
You made the point when you identified our strengths and our weaknesses that we've got good R&D. We're already spending more on R&D than our competition, and yet we've been losing innovation. Our R&D isn't creating as many new products, and yet you're saying to step up our spending on R&D even more. Isn't that just a case of putting good money after bad?
What we're saying is that we should increase our long-term R&D spending, which will eventually turn into short-term R&D spending. We have to increase the R&D spending and be able to push out the products in the long term. Yes, we're spending more than our competition. However, we are an innovation company. In order for us to continue developing innovative products, we have to continue our focus. It is our strength. That's where we have to focus, and we have to make sure that we develop that pipeline for the future.
If I could just add to that. Okay, just that's fine. What we're saying is what the problem for the creativity. We're saying we need to have the products going through the pipeline. This is where the stifling is occurring from before. This screening system here is having, albeit from an arm's length distance, is having a negative effect on the culture of the organisation and the people. Because, as we saw before, there is this sense of disappointment, this sense of, can I get my product through? There's the repercussions if the products do not go through. By adjusting this at the same time as pushing more things through, then we've got more products coming through, but by easing up on the culture, over the longer term we're going to see more innovation, more of a free spirit, more of the individuals having less inhibitions and being more prepared to be creative.
You talked earlier about the historical success of the SBU approach, but you only addressed it in the contingency plan. If your current plan doesn't work, then we may want to revisit the micro SBU approach that has worked for us in the past. Why wouldn't we go right back and do what we did in the past? Why don't we adopt a micro SBU or breakup approach right away?
Well, I think the central issue there is that when we had the micro SBU approach, and the reason why we moved away from that was we were facing global competition, and we needed to create products that were global. With very small teams of 2 to 5 people, it was impossible at that time to get people to dream of ideas that were span the globe, that would be able to harness the energy both in the United States and in other parts of the world. When we went to a larger size teams, we had more people in those teams, and therefore they could span the cultural gaps and span the different diversities that was required across the globe with respect to products. And now what we're saying is perhaps the pendulum's gone a little bit too far in that side, and we have to come back just a little bit from that level, because we still are facing global competition. In fact, it's intensifying, and as Rula pointed out, they have bigger resources, as big as we in some cases. So we have to meet the global challenge, but we can do it in a way that's more innovative than we've been doing currently.
You're already advocating breaking up or changing your spending pattern in R&D to divide it up along global lines, along geographic lines rather. So aren't you already taking the first step toward going back to where we were before anyway? You're not globalizing your spending, you're already going back to a geographic distribution.
What we're doing is, certainly there's some facets of what was done in the past that were very important, and we're taking on one of the good points of the past. As Miles just mentioned, the groups, these creative groups have just got too big. What we're saying is the groups of the past just do not suit the present business environment. But one of the big strengths of the groups of the past was that the creative spirit with the smaller groups was much freer. So we're saying we're looking for somewhere between those two. That's one of the big assets of the previous system.
But what's happened in lately with the corporate culture is we've seen that not only is it the size of the groups which is causing the problem, but it's this intensive screening system between the product being developed and the product actually making market. It's the changes going on there that cause some problems. So we've taken the good things from the past strategies and we've added a few through to them so that we can take the best of the last strategy and meet what's going on in the environment now, meet the changes in the environment now.
One of my concerns, again, in this contingency plan, if it doesn't work, you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said we might have to rethink our targets, that they may be too aggressive given our size. That's all well and good, but how do we explain that to our shareholders, and what will happen to our share price if we rethink those targets?
Let me address that question for you. We're advocating that we grow the company on a 5% annual rate over the next 5 years through this plan, which will still be double the amount that we've been growing historically over the last 5 years. In that respect, any increase over that 2.5% level that we've been having over the last 5 years will actually result in still higher stock prices for our company.
In your recommendation of opening research centers in other parts of the world, what consideration have you given to the fact that if I open more research centers in Europe, this is also where all of my competition is sitting? How much of at bat am I in putting more strategic information closer to my competition?
We have to be very confident and be very, very aggressive. What we have is a competitive advantage in our company. When we're firing on all cylinders, when we have the systems in place that harness the power of the innovation and the entrepreneurial spirit, we're better than the competitors. So if we take that system and we go into Europe aggressively with that system, we're going to have a competitive advantage. That's our strength against the competition. So sure, that's a very big market, and sure, it's a competitive market. We cannot not be there. We have to be there in force. But because of those internal strengths we've got, we're going to take them and harness the power of those to apply them to Europe. Sorry.
And let's not forget that around 50% of our sales are coming from out of US and mainly from Europe, while around only 30% of our R&D is done in Europe only, while the rest is done in the US. So your R&D should be in the market where you're selling the product.
I'd just like to maybe wrap up this question for you. We already have research centers in Europe. What we're advocating is increasing the personnel there. With respect to our competition, we will actually be able to go out and recruit them and bring them into our innovative process. So in fact, we should be able also to stifle our competitive R&D efforts by going and recruiting their best people.
Coming back something at the beginning, our senior management starts to lose their memory. I can't remember forming this task force and what its constituents are. Can you tell me what it's made of so I know where these recommendations are coming from? What's the task force components? What's your backgrounds within the company? I presume your company employees of some kind or other. I'm glad to meet you.
I recall actually interviewing me about 15 years ago. We have a multifaceted team here. Miles comes from the implementation. His side is very much with respect to the HR people and the implementation. Ken's background is from a finance background. Our corporate culture and our external affairs specialist is Rula. And I myself have come directly from the strategy department. We've made a task force and representatives of each of those departments.
I'm struck by the fact that you identified the culture as being one of innovation and entrepreneurship. And while your recommendations certainly focus a great deal of attention on the innovation aspect of our research and development, I don't really see where you're fostering renewed entrepreneurship.
Well, the first, you're right to a degree, I believe, because the innovation is what we want to get, and we think entrepreneurial people are what are going to do that for us. And as you'll recall from the slide I put up, it may have gone by a little bit fast, I'm sorry about that, but one of the aspects was when we're hiring new people, we're looking for more innovative people that are entrepreneurial as well. So some of the things that we're going to ask the HR department to do to revise the hiring strategy is to look for people who are entrepreneurial and autonomous. And that way we're going to foster the entrepreneurial spirit from the ground up.
What do entrepreneurial people look like?
That's very true. very difficult to recognize that you cannot recognize an entrepreneur. They don't have entrepreneur written on their forehead. But what we can do, what is within our control, is the systems that we're trying to develop here. We want to try and we want to try and actively encourage that entrepreneurial spirit. And the major part of the plan, which is taking care of that, is the fact that there's more positions to move within the company. When we go global as well, there's more positions to move there. So if you've got a young individual who's really keen on the product and they really want to take it somewhere, as the company expands, both with respect to the management and the opportunities within the company and also the international possibilities, that person with the entrepreneurial spirit is going to be wanting to take that product and develop it in this growing organization. There's more room to move, both laterally, if you like, and vertically.
We've talked a bit, and you spoke earlier about how certainly one of the keys to developing an innovative structure is to have an environment where failure is tolerated. In fact, where well-intentioned failure is almost encouraged. Now, what changes do we want to make in reward structures, promotion opportunities, and whatever else in order to make sure that we really foster that sort of environment?
Well, I believe one of the essential issues that we've bandied about while we're going over this for the last couple of weeks is the fact that we can set up competitions of generating ideas. We can set up competitions amongst different groups to generate profitable ideas, revenue ideas, and give back compensation to those groups with respect to profit sharing of those ideas.
Thank you.
Hello, excuse me? Could I have everyone's attention for one more minute, please? Thank you. You don't have to sit down, you can just listen. I would just like to thank all three teams for their individual analysis and presentation. I'd like to congratulate them on behalf of the three organizers. I'd like to thank our panel of judges for taking time off to come and help us today in this horrendous weather. And I would also like to remind everyone that we have the banquet tonight, and it's been pushed up to 6 o'clock. So don't go anywhere. It's right in the Grand Salon. So see you there. Thank you.
The three of us undertook this challenge last spring when we were asked questions. Are you prepared for all these different contingencies and different things that can happen? What if you have a snowstorm, a team that can't get there, something? You guys never mentioned a week-long ice storm like this. Nonetheless, I have to say I'm ecstatic. The week was absolutely amazing.
Tuesday morning. Remember I said this weather was a piece of cake? I lied. And I just mention it in the context of some people told me over cocktails this evening how they didn't think we'd had any glitches, everything went smoothly, nothing unusual happened, and they're amazed. And I'll just tell you, your amazement is only because the three people and all of those supporting them, Max, Deborah, and Rebecca, handled every crisis. And I don't think you realize how many there were. One person said he saw people flying down the hall. He knew something must have been wrong. We managed. I would like, on behalf of everybody, to thank these three people. They run a budget, I guess, with services and donations from the business community who've been tremendous, of around $200,000. This is no small undertaking. It's almost 12 full months of work. So on behalf of everybody, big round of applause. Except for their great work. I meant one comment. There are a couple of people that we have to thank every year, and particularly about the 175 judges from the business community who came here in this terrible weather to help us out with this competition. That's what distinguishes this competition, we think, is that the business community are the judges, and we really like to thank each and every one of them, except the one who didn't show up yesterday morning. And I got this panic call from Max. I was on the 24th floor of our Montreal regional office. Can you run down here? We need you to judge. I said, no problem. Get up, walk to the elevator. Just as I get there, everything dies in the building, including the elevators. So I walked down 24 flights of stairs. All the others, thank you very much. There are two people who I really like to go out of my, three people I really go out of my way to thank. The two people who've been involved on the faculty of Commerce Administration for many years, Pierre Brunet and Ivey. Their commitment, their dedication, their enthusiasm. If some of the businesses that we did during the case competition had employees like those, we wouldn't have had any cases to analyze. I'll give you an example. Louis is on sabbatical this year. He has, despite being on sabbatical, agreed to continue coordinating this event through the students. It's a credit course for them. He hasn't missed a single meeting except one, and that really annoyed the rest of the committee because he was on a Côte d'Azur at the time. But we'll forgive you for one meeting, Louis. And those two guys really deserve a special round of applause. Louis, Pierre. We had a new twist to the case competition in having people from our communications program join us. And it wouldn't have happened if a professor had volunteered to make it part of his curriculum. My line was, I was here a month ago, and I said I never understood how a university functions. And I still don't, because getting this to happen is very difficult. But one professor said, I'll do it, I'll make it part of my course. And that's why we have all this communications media, and we'll have information packages for all of yours. All of you, the students did a great job. Thank you, Ken Briscoe, for helping us out. all ready to get off at the same starting post as everybody else. Starting point is everybody else waited till late in the evening so that we could have a supplemental case. And I have to also thank some of the judges who agreed to sit around and work. Can I say it was one of them? Until 11:30 that night to make sure that we had everything under control. So these things happen, they're memories, and when we go back to our respective universities, you could all talk of this winter of '98 to your grandchildren about it. This is unusual weather. I know you won't believe anybody from Montreal who tells you this is unusual weather. I'd like to get a little serious for a minute. I don't know how many of you know about one of the members of the Northeastern team. Just as he was leaving from the Boston area to come up here, he got the news that his father had died. I get emotional, you have to excuse me. I can't help it. His father had told him that he thought this was very important. So he came up here, he went through the whole competition, and that's why we had to start a little earlier this afternoon to give him the opportunity to leave, get back to Boston, pick up his daughter, and fly out to California where they were delaying the funeral for his arrival. The case competition decided last night that we'd like to make a donation in memory of his father. And we'd like one of the members of Northeastern to come up and accept that, please. wife Brad Whitney, who's like this stuff. First place prize is sponsored by the Bank of Montreal. I always wanted to be a bank, so it's great to get checks to present it because they're not here. So I'm opening up very slowly. First place team is Northeastern.
I want to say that this is both very happy day for us and also very sad day. You already learned why it's a sad day and you now know why it's a happy day. The only thing I want to add to the news is that the members of the team decided that whatever prize money they won, they would donate to a scholarship in Richard Alcott's name, that's Richard's father's name. We would simply pay a real contribution added to the pool. We call it the Alcott Scholarship, the Alcott Prize for something.